I am C-3PO, Human-Cyborg Relations.
This officious robot loves language, hates space travel, and is one of the most famous robots of all time. I'm Dr. M, and this is my robot, Photon.
Hi!
And today we're looking at the surprising details about C-3PO. C-3PO and R2-D2 are icons of the Star Wars franchise. As a kid, they were the characters who first fueled my love of robots. Before we've even met Luke Skywalker or Han Solo, the droids are the main characters in Episode 4. The movie starts off in the midst of a deadly space battle. R2-D2 and C-3PO risk their lives to sneak out vital information to the rebellion. The Empire doesn't register the droids as a threat, and they escaped right under their noses. 3PO and R2 land on a desert planet where they meet up with Luke and Obi-Wan, and the adventure continues from the humans' point of view.
The droids almost always travel as a pair, even though their functions aren't related. 3PO describes R2 as his counterpart several times.
And this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Sometimes they bicker like siblings, but mostly they have each other's backs. Each is a unique character with plenty to analyze, so R2 will get his own future episode. For now, I'm starting with C-3PO, because he was my first robot crush.
Crush?
What can I say? I've always kind of liked intelligent, preppy characters. Abe Sapien and Niles Crane were my type too. 3PO is a protocol droid programmed for intergalactic etiquette. He's like a personal assistant who can help translate languages and cultural differences.
Wonderful! We are now a part of the tribe.
When you realize protocol droids are basically high-end secretaries, you can see why C-3PO's body really wasn't made for wandering through the desert.
I've got to rest before I fall apart. My joints are almost frozen.
Or sprinting across a spaceship hangar.
Wait for me!
He's supposed to be standing around serving tea in conference rooms or following around diplomats on carpeted floors. So it kind of explains why he hates going on space adventures. He's just not built for it.
Curse my metal body, I wasn't fast enough, it's all my fault!
In The Phantom Menace, we see a protocol droid TC-14 who has the exact same body and mannerisms as 3PO, but with a female voice.
The ambassadors are Jedi Knights, I believe.
So a protocol droid's gender seems to be based on their system settings rather than body type. Presumably a droid could even change gender based on the preferences of their user.
I wonder if Han Solo would have been nicer to 3PO if he'd been a girl.
Hey Photon, remember when you animated a scene with a female C-3PO and R2 for Star Wars Uncut?
Yes, they barely even used a second of it.
If you haven't seen it, the Star Wars Uncut project remakes the original trilogy using scenes created by fans. Highly recommended. And if you want to see Photon's full gender swap scene, including Hanna Solo and Prince Leon, you can see it here. In most movies, robot characters don't understand human emotion and miss the nuances of social cues. But as a protocol droid, 3PO is pretty smart about human behavior. For instance, he seems to understand the social implications of this kiss or he wouldn't have looked at Han. And the boys haven't spoken openly about their attraction to Leia. 3PO figured it out on his own. He knows love when he sees it.
Maybe he's just curious because it's the first kiss he's ever seen.
Yeah, he's excited to see some human action. But he can still miss important cues when he's focused on a task.
Sir, I've isolated the reverse power flux coupling.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's not much need for etiquette on the frontier of space, so 3PO mostly acts as an interpreter.
I suppose you're programmed for etiquette and protocol.
Protocol? Why, it's my primary function, sir.
I have no need for a protocol droid.
He can not only translate for alien languages, but he can also speak to machines, including the Millennium Falcon.
I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it has the most peculiar dialect.
And of course, he's the main interpreter for the non-verbal R2-D2.
Oh, he says it's nothing, sir. Merely a malfunction. He says I found her and keeps repeating she's here.
He says that our instructions are to give it only to Jabba himself.
C-3PO interprets for Leia in disguise, the Ewoks, and even Jabba the Hutt.
If I told you half the things I've heard about this Jabba the Hutt, you'd probably short-circuit.
But wait, R2-D2 and C-3PO always travel together. How could 3PO have heard so much more about Jabba?
That's what's so cool about being a super linguist. When 3PO's walking through crowded streets full of aliens, he's probably picking up what everyone is saying. So he's passively getting a lot more intel than the other characters. It's almost like being psychic.
But it could also be a curse. Sometimes you don't want to know what other people are saying about you.
Ichuta, how rude.
He doesn't like you.
Speaking of not being liked, why aren't the droids allowed in the Mos Eisley Cantina?
We don't serve their kind here.
Make your way out by the speeder. We don't want any trouble.
I heartily agree with you, sir.
But the robots are helpful and polite. Isn't this anti-robot prejudice?
More likely it's because they're taking up room but not buying any food or drink, and criminals might be afraid of them being used as recording devices. Or maybe their wholesome vibe would ruin the scumbag atmosphere.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Speaking of ruining the vibe, I know some people don't care for C-3PO because he complains so much.
We seem to be made to suffer. It's our lot in life.
He has his moments of inconsistency.
Between ourselves, I think Master Luke is in considerable danger. Don't worry about Master Luke. I'm sure he'll be all right.
But overall, he tends to have a bleak outlook. I guess I would too if I got kidnapped, shot at, and ripped apart as often as he does. He's good at his job, but he rarely gets to do his job. Instead, he's dragged all over the galaxy on dangerous missions. And unlike the over-optimistic humans, he can't help but calculate just how dangerous these missions are.
Sir, the odds of surviving a direct assault on an Imperial Star Destroyer... Shut up!
Though to be totally fair, R2-D2 does this calculate the odds thing too.
R2 says the chances of survival are 725 to 1.
Complaining makes sense as an android's last resort. He can't directly disobey his human masters, but he also has a survival instinct.
Oh, this is suicide!
So complaining and protesting is the only card he has to play.
And the humans don't listen like they should. C-3PO could have diverted disaster several times if Han didn't ignore him.
Sir, might I suggest that you...
It can wait. Sir, if I may venture an opinion.
I'm not really interested in your opinion, 3PO.
If that wasn't bad enough, Leia switches him off against his will.
The Empire may be gracious enough.
What a jerk move. We already know C-3PO thinks being shut down is unpleasant.
I'm gonna shut down everything but the emergency power systems.
Sir, I'm almost afraid to ask, but does that include shutting me down too?
What about the part where he voluntarily powers down?
Sir, if you'll not be needing me, I'll close down for a while.
Sure, go ahead.
Seems like the difference between going to sleep and being knocked unconscious to me. These humans treat their droids as nothing more than tools.
True. Even in movies where robots act as subordinate servants, they can still be treated as part of the crew.
C-3PO and R2 are sold or stolen a lot. First they belong to Captain Antilles, then they're stolen by Jawas and sold to Uncle Owen. Then they follow Luke, and then they're given to Jabba the Hutt. Then return to Luke again, and ultimately 3PO spends most of his time with Leia. And that's just the original trilogy.
Man, they do get passed around a lot. And they're just resigned to serving whoever owns them in the moment. But they also have a preference for their masters. C-3PO is disturbed when he thinks Luke gave him away as a gift.
What could possibly have come over Master Luke? Is it something I did? I never expressed any unhappiness with my work.
Interestingly, when C-3PO has no clear owner, he just wanders off on his own. When he and R2 first land on Tatooine, C-3PO goes his own way with no clear directive.
Well, I'm not going that way. It's much too rocky. This way is much easier.
If he's joining R2's mission, they should stick together, but he clearly doesn't believe in the mission and just blows it off.
Secret mission? What plans? What are you talking about?
But if he doesn't support R2's mission, then he should never have climbed into that escape pod. Didn't he already have a job to do on Captain Antilles' ship?
Yeah, and wouldn't the droids be programmed with a contingency plan in the event they find themselves alone like this? Like returning to their previous owner, or checking in at the nearest robot repair depot.
I guess he's unique because he was created by Anakin.
Ugh, don't get me started on the prequels. I was pumped for the chance to see C-3PO's origin story, but this was totally weak. The movie tries to give credit to a 9-year-old for building C-3PO, when this droid model was obviously designed and created by someone else a long time ago. Anakin just found the broken pieces of a robot and put it back together. By that logic, let's just credit R2-D2 for building C-3PO after he's dismembered in The Empire Strikes Back.
Maybe Anakin programmed C-3PO.
No way. C-3PO knows over 6 million forms of communication. Anakin's not capable of that kind of coding. And earlier in this episode, we see a protocol droid with 3PO's same vocabulary and mannerisms, so we can't even say Anakin's responsible for 3PO's personality.
C-3PO meeting R2 this early on seems like a stretch too.
And C-3PO is briefly owned by young Owen, Luke's future uncle. What are the odds that the same exact guy would buy this same exact droid 19 years later? Especially when he doesn't need a protocol droid.
I have no need for a protocol droid.
It's like they're just jamming a bunch of impossible coincidences together for the sake of fan service. But you know what would really serve the fans? giving C-3PO an original backstory that actually adds something new. Maybe he was a private tutor to the son of a corrupt Imperial senator. Maybe he escaped a life of slavery in the spice mines of Kessel. Anything but this incestuous circle of the same repeated characters who bring nothing new to the narrative. According to StarWars.com, 3PO had his mind wiped before he was handed over to Captain Antilles in Episode 4, so he doesn't even remember all this history, so what is the point?
They're there, Doctor!
I thought it was so cool in Episode 4 where C-3PO says,
Thank the Maker.
I thought, awesome, what does that mean? Does 3PO believe in a higher power? Which religion's god would that be? What does robot worship look like? Do droids and astromechs have souls? Are they destined for an afterlife? Or maybe protocol droids just pay lip service to the religious customs of whoever owns them at the time.
The Maker of Master Annie.
But no, just like midichlorians ruined any kind of deeper religious meaning behind the Force, retconning Anakin into being the Maker ruins any kind of depth on 3PO's thoughts about divinity.
But speaking of C-3PO and divinity, in Return of the Jedi, he gets a chance to literally play God.
You sound pretty stoked about that, Photon.
I think it's high time he got a taste of power after being kicked around so much.
Typical.
Sure, he doesn't get much respect, but 3PO dishes out plenty of disrespect too. For a protocol droid, he can be surprisingly rude, especially to the non-human characters.
You know such a scrap pile. Jawas, disgusting creatures.
Oh, switch off, you sleeping furball. I thought that hairy beast would be the end of me.
But on the forest moon of Endor, these furry non-humans take an immediate liking to 3PO.
I do believe they think I am some sort of god.
Well, why don't you use your divine influence and get us out of this?
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
And that seems like a good idea. We've already seen how bad things turn when an android develops a god complex and goes rogue.
But the humans are going to die if C-3PO doesn't stop them. Shouldn't he be able to go against his programming to save a life?
Well, maybe his programming blocks him from giving godly decrees, but he can lie to save everyone. At Luke's suggestion, he pretends to be a sorcerer and scares the Ewoks into letting his friends go.
Guess it's okay to impersonate an all-powerful being, as long as you don't call yourself a god when you do it.
Well, we definitely know the droids can lie. 3PO and R2 both use deception to manipulate their enemies.
I'd like to take him down to maintenance.
And their masters.
He says the restraining bolt has short-circuited his recording system.
I guess the droids' programmers realized that sometimes it's useful to humans if robots are allowed to be less than 100% honest. We see this spelled out explicitly with Tars from Interstellar.
Hey Tars, what's your honesty parameter?
90%.
90%.
Absolute honesty isn't always the most diplomatic, nor the safest form of communication with emotional beings.
Good thing you've never lied to me, right, Photon?
Of course not, Doctor.
Sure, he's got his salty moments and character flaws, but that's what gives C-3PO character depth on par with the human cast. He's self-sacrificial.
You must repair him. Sir, if any of my circuits or gears will help, I'll gladly donate them.
And yet he stays humble. He claims he's not much of an entertainer.
I'm not much more than an interpreter, and not very good at telling stories.
Yet he's captivated generations of fans. And as a kid who fell in love with the droids before I could even follow the plot, this Star Wars fan will forever be grateful to the golden boy who took me to a galaxy far, far away.
Check out the playlist for more robot review.
Thanks to everyone who gave this video a like. We hope you'll subscribe and stick around. Be sure to leave a comment with your suggestion for a future robot we should review.